It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
On this edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast, free agency, we give you our thoughts on everything that's been going on around the National Football League in regards to free agency. Plus, we have March Madness, the first two rounds of March Madness. We will discuss along with some upset teams who made it pretty far. So, a lot to cover here on this edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast. But before we begin, we would like to thank our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and Chief Graphics. Big thanks, as always, to Dave Johnson and Productions by Quet for their support of the Kirby on Sports Podcast as well. All right, folks, it's time for yet another edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast. It comes your way right now.
I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby, on Sports Podcast.
All right. Welcome back to another edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast. As always, big thanks to our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and Chief Graphics. A jam-packed, loaded show for you today. And guess who decided to make his way back? Dan Demski. You can catch him on Twitter at Dan_Demski97, our lead contributor and co-host of the Kirby on Sports Podcast. Dan, now a resident of Northern Virginia. May God rest your soul.
Oh, man, it's good to be back, though. I'll tell you what, I missed it. It's been such a long time since we've been together, man. I think it's been, at least 3 weeks, maybe longer, since we've done a pod together.
3-4 weeks. Yeah, I mean, you had to do what you had to do in moving to Northern Virginia. But how'd that move go? How are you settling in? Do you like the new home studio and stuff to record the stuff now?
Yeah, man, it went smoothly. Had a friend come and help, and then my parents, of course, helped, and my two roommates now too. So everybody chipped in. We all helped move each other's stuff, and it all worked out well. And yeah, man, it's been nice so far. My room's a little small, but I'm able to fit everything just fine. And yeah, it's nice. I like this area a lot so far. So just still trying to figure it all out. So that's the main thing.
It sucks here on the Kirby on Sports Podcast due to the fact that Dan is in Northern Virginia, so we have to go to Zoom full time. So
for now, yeah, we're gonna figure something out where we can do some once we get back into April and stuff, and things hopefully continue to improve. We can do some in-person podcasts. I'm probably going to be back in town here and there. I mean, it's only an hour drive, so
awesome stuff, man.
Well, and you're definitely welcome to come out here too.
Absolutely. We're so glad you're back, Dan. A lot to get
man.
to. So much to get to. So let's just dive right in. Ladies and gentlemen, we did not have an opportunity to have like a free agency live show. I sort of wish we could have, but I mean, the way things worked out, it just was not possible. So we have a lot of free agency moves to break down that I want to start with first. Okay. And then after that, we'll move into March Madness, because obviously the madness is complete madness and there's a lot to get to. So just let's get started. NFL free agency. I mean, there were a ton of moves. I managed to pick out a couple that I would like to go over. There might be more, Dan. If you have more that I did not discuss, you're welcome to bring those up as well. But the first move I want to discuss is a familiar face staying with the same team in Shaq Barrett, staying with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 4 years, $72 million. What is unique about this move, along with some other signings Tampa Bay has made to keep the team intact? Almost the entire Bucs roster from their Super Bowl run is returning for 2021. So I know it's hard to go back to back for a Super Bowl, but it helps when you have your entire core right there that won a Super Bowl for you last year back in 2021.
Yeah, they're the best team, and an important thing year after year, what they talk about continuously is, how do you do with injuries the next year, and also, the salary situation. A lot of teams have to sort of not rebuild after Super Bowl season, but sort of kind of step back a little bit and make some tough decisions financially. And Tampa Bay hasn't had to do that. So they are definitely the best team. Shaq Barrett, he's not the best defensive end in football, but I think he's pretty solid, and he plays a lot of football. So I think they're a very scary team this season as well. I don't think anyone's going to challenge that. So and they also moved to re-sign Leonard Fournette, franchise tag Chris Godwin, re-sign Gronk to a 1-year deal. And those are the big ones for the Buccaneers, as well as taking care of some other situations. Most of their signings were 1-year deals, or of course, like I said, Chris Godwin got the franchise tag. So, that's very interesting. Those are really savvy moves, I think, and I think they have a good idea that their window is still there to win another Super Bowl. I think it just depends on how much longer Brady's going to play. I really think they have 2 or 3 more years of a possibility of them winning a Super Bowl, being a Super Bowl contender at least. So they could be the talk of the town for the next few years for sure.
There's a chance. Obviously, we are a far way away from football season, but there is a chance with this that Tampa Bay could go back to back. I could most certainly see it happen with these signings and keeping players in place instead of moving players to different teams, so on and so forth. But that's a move, in my opinion, I wanted to start off with, because 1, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, and 2, they have everybody back together again. And with Tom Brady, you have Gronkowski, and what the Bucs did best. I think that's going to carry over into next season.
Yeah, and the thing, a couple other things is they took them a while last year to mesh. It took them about half the season to really start to put it together, and then they went on that winning streak at the end of the regular season, and then of course in the postseason too. That's another thing this year that they're not going to have an issue with. They're going to know each other's strengths and weaknesses and what each other are capable of, and I think that's very much a dangerous thing for all the other teams in that division and in the conference in general. And then also, these players are already bought in 110% because they're coming off a Super Bowl win where a lot of people had them as underdogs. We talked about it on this show. I know it was talked about throughout the country of, the Chiefs were the favorite. The Chief, Patrick Mahomes is so great, and the Chiefs are so great, and they're going to dominate. And Tampa just outplayed them in just about every area. So these players are already bought in 100% this year, and I think that just gives them just another edge too. That's so rare to find on a football team, I think.
Yeah, and I didn't even have this on the rundown for today, but the Chiefs had to restructure a bunch of contracts so they had room to sign other people, because they just released those 2 offensive linemen. I can't recall their names off the top of my head, but they had to restructure a couple guys. I know Mahomes was one of them, with Patrick Mahomes getting that monster deal and everything. They had to move some stuff around to make money work so they could improve, because losing a Super Bowl That's one thing. But I mean, some players might leave, something like that. But there's always room for improvement on the losing end of a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and you look at that side, and there's a lot of question marks in the AFC, I think, about who's going to take that next step outside of Kansas City. I think we're all pretty solidified on the fact that Kansas City, maybe not, they're not going to be the next dynasty. I think that's going to be extremely difficult to repeat in any point in the future. But the fact that they have a pretty wide window to win another Super Bowl too, and they've been to it in back-to-back seasons, so they understand. And yeah, that was going to be tough with that big Patrick Mahomes contract. They were going to have to do a lot of work. They definitely did that. That goes to show you just what it's all about. I mean, winning teams do those sort of things, Josh. People will restructure their contracts when they know that they're in a place that is a contending Super Bowl team. And Kansas City and Tampa Bay are by far the two most contending teams, I think, this upcoming season.
So, yeah, my question to you, Dan, let me just throw this out there just because. Who has a better chance of going back to the Super Bowl next year? I know it's early, but in your opinion, as we stand right now, who has a better chance of going back? The Chiefs or the Bucs?
I'm going to take the Bucs. I think the NFC doesn't have as many teams that I think could play at that elite level. If you look at the AFC, you have, especially in the AFC North this year, I think the AFC North is going to be strong. With of course with Pittsburgh coming back, Baltimore and Cleveland was great last year. They're going to be a team. You know, they played the Chiefs tough in the playoffs, so they're going to be solid. New England, I know we're going to touch on them, but they reloaded in free agency. I think they're going to be a tough team to beat. And then the AFC South, you have a couple really strong teams. Of course, Tennessee and Indy. I think they are a playoff team, and then you have Buffalo. So those teams alone, I mean, those are really, really talented teams. I think outside of Tampa Bay, I put Green Bay in there. I think they're going to be in the thick of things again, like they always are. I really don't see another team, Josh, that really impresses me. That I think can stand in the Buccaneers' way of making it back to the Super Bowl. And I just think I'm not going to say they have an easy road, but certainly I think they have less elite competition than Kansas City has to play on the AFC side.
Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens for a moment, because I know they just signed Sammy Watkins, and that's huge. I mean, the Ravens are making deals. Yeah, we all know the Ravens. They can make it to the playoffs, but they want to go one step further, potentially making it to a Super Bowl, and that's one step in the right direction by getting a wide receiver like Sammy Watkins. That's another weapon that Lamar Jackson can throw to. I mean, Dan, I'll just turn this to you since you're mostly all about the Ravens. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I like the move, and I like that it's a 1-year deal too. We all know Sammy Watkins has had some injury issues. It's been well documented. But when he's on the field, he's a difference maker, especially when he had Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball to him. But I think the concern is the injuries, and I think that's one reason why I like a 1-year deal, because you're really going to see this year what he's able to do. And the Ravens have missed on receivers for a long time, not just drafting guys, but in free agency. They signed Steve Smith late in his career. They signed I'm trying to think back here, Jeremy Maclin, who was the most recent one, Des Bryant. I mean, those are in the last 6-7 years, and of course they've drafted some guys that haven't panned out either. Really, the last free agent receiver that they signed, who was a big deal, was Anquan Bolden. He was like the last guy, and that was 10 years ago. That was more than 10 years ago that he signed with the team. So, yeah, I like this move. I think it's a low risk, high reward move. Like I said, a $6 million deal. $5 million of that guaranteed. I'm fine with it, and I really think the Ravens are going to go out in the draft and they're going to be aggressive. That defense is going to be back. That defense is going to be strong again this year, even losing a couple players, which I'm sure we're going to touch on. losing Matt Judon. I know it was a pretty big loss, but he wanted a lot of money, so I understand why they decided to part ways. But I do think the Ravens are going to continue to try to find Lamar weapons because, I mean, that wide receiver core was extremely inconsistent this past season. And, you know, they just didn't have anyone who was a true number one receiver. They had guys, you know, Mark Andrews at times was a number one guy when they needed him, and sometimes Hollywood Brown. But, you know, game after game, those guys were dropping passes. They were inconsistent. And it was a big reason why they struggled in really both playoff games offensively, outside of what Lamar was able to do running the football. So I like this move a lot. I think it needed to happen. They had to sign somebody. I know they were trying to get Nelson Aguilar. And they also tried to go after Kenny Galladay, but those fell through. But he wanted a lot. Both those guys wanted a lot of money too. So I think the Ravens were trying to spend, you know, a decent, a lower amount of money on a receiver, and I think Sammy Watkins, if he can stay healthy, I mean, he's going to be a great receiver this year, and definitely a big help to Lamar, who, like I said, doesn't have a true number one.
Yeah, great insight there. I mean, I agree with everything you said there. Low risk, high reward. I really do think if Watkins can stay healthy, he's going to be a great asset to the Baltimore Ravens. So let's move on to the next team. Let me put this in perspective. Tom Brady goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for winning a Super Bowl. And on the other end, the Patriots, most of their players opt out due to COVID. A few big names. They have Cam Newton as their starting quarterback, and they missed the playoffs. What other team besides the New England Patriots act like there's absolutely no cap room whatsoever, and they go off in free agency? I'm going to list them out for you. Tight end Jonnu Smith, 4 years, $50 million. Tight end Hunter Henry, 3 years, $37.5 million, $25 million guaranteed. As you mentioned, Dan, Matthew Judon, 4 years, $56 million. Kyle Van Noy, 2-year deal, a max of $13.2 million. You have Nelson Aguilar, 2 years, $26 million. Safety Jalen Mills, 4 years, $24 million, $9 million guaranteed. In wide receiver Kendrick Bourne, 3 years, $22.5 million. My goodness, the Patriots want to go back to the Super Bowl so badly. And what a better combo than Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick to try to make that happen in free agency.
Yeah, this is scary. This is very scary for the AFC because it puts another team, I think, in the mix. And I also, you know, this is going to be something that's not talked about. Cam Newton signed to that 1 year contract. I like that move a lot because I think this is going to be a telling year for him as far as, you know, his future in New England, and how they've surrounded him with amazing talent. You put Nelson Aguilar out there, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. They're two incredibly talented tight ends. They did need some offensive line help, and they got Trent Brown from the Raiders. I thought that was a great move, and they also, you know, got two safeties as well, or centers, I mean, as well. And then on defense, I mean, it's almost like they did a franchise on Madden and just did a fantasy draft. That's kind of what it looks like to me. They're literally building a whole new roster, like right in front of our eyes. So, yeah, they definitely flexed their muscles this offseason. You know, Bill Belichick and really this team, we're not used to seeing this year after year. They may sign a couple guys in free agency, but the Patriots, throughout their time, especially with Brady and Belichick, I mean, they were not known to go out and, first of all, get a bunch of players, and second of all, spend a lot of money. And I think we saw the depth issues the Patriots had last year. Injuries, guys opting out due to COVID. They had COVID hit their team decently hard as well. So, you know, who knows if this season will be affected by COVID? Hopefully it's not, but it's another thing to keep in mind here. The Patriots are trying to plan for the future should that happen. But yeah, it's just amazing. It seemed like every time there was a free agency notification from Adam Schefter, especially, it was the Patriots signing somebody. So it's just crazy to me to see all the guys they brought in, and they definitely surrounded Cam Newton with some really good weapons and shored up that offensive line, which I think were two big issues this season. And that defense gets even better. They already had a pretty good defense, I thought, and I think they're even better now.
But is it really crazy? It's the New England Patriots. If they weren't going to make the playoffs, I had I knew from the moment they did not make the playoffs that something like this would happen.
Well, I think we all kind of had the expectation that they would sign some guys in free agency, but I don't think anybody thought they were gonna, sign all these players. It's just insane how many guys they brought back, and of course they re-signed Nick Folk too, who that's a pretty good deal too. So, it's. I think we could have predicted that they were going to sign some guys in free agency, and I think most teams get 4 or 5, 6 players. That's a big get. I mean, they got a whole roster worth of guys, so it shows how serious they are about turning the ship around. And yeah, they're going to be a scary team this year, especially in that division. That's going to be a really fun division. With Buffalo playing as well as they did this past season. Miami surprising everybody, with Tua, they played pretty well. And now the Patriots, that's going to be a fun division this year and maybe one of the most entertaining in football.
I want to sort of touch on Cam Newton a little bit because I know it was reported that they were going to part ways this offseason, but I think New England did not have a choice. And they sort of had to re-sign Cam Newton. I have a big feeling that New England's going to draft a quarterback in this
I was going to say
draft.
That. Yeah, I was going to say that too.
Yeah. I mean, all factors are pointing to New England is going to draft a quarterback. And
yeah,
Cam Newton has experience. He has been to a Super Bowl, so he could be a mentor to whoever they will pick if they pick a quarterback in this year's draft. But I do like it's a 1-year deal for $13.6 million and the $6 million in incentives. So essentially the incentives mean if you reach certain milestones within the season, you get rewarded by more money. And that's what's happening here because the Patriots didn't want to throw a lot of money at Cam Newton if he wasn't going to pan out. $13.6 million, that's not a lot for an organization like the Patriots. And you throw in $6 million if Cam does better and achieves the goals that are in his contract. That's a really good move by the Patriots, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was a good move all around for the Patriots because, like I said before, he had a lot of issues this past season, and I think, I would imagine he and Bill Belichick sat down in the offseason and had a discussion over, talking to Cam and ask if he's talked to him about, possibly working on a contract and whatnot. Because I think a lot of people thought that this was going to be the end. But again, the Patriots, like we said, they did have a lot of issues with COVID, with injuries. And Cam Newton really didn't have much to work with. He struggled immensely. I mean, only threw 8 touchdowns this past year. So I think this is a great thing all around. And I definitely agree with you. I was actually going to say that I think New England's definitely going to draft a quarterback. It's the perfect situation to bring in a guy. Maybe somebody who's not as well known out of this draft class. I don't have any names off the top of my head. I haven't, to be honest, I haven't paid much attention to any mock drafts or anything yet. We got to start looking at that with the draft. I think it's less than a month away.
I've been dabbling in it, just looking occasionally at some of the top guys, but this draft, it could be an interesting one for real.
Yeah, and the Patriots, I mean, look, they have success. Well, Tom Brady, I mean, they have success bringing in a 6th round draft pick. and turning him into something great. Now, he's a once-in-a-lifetime player. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I think this quarterback class is probably pretty deep, and it gives the Patriots a chance to evaluate maybe not a guy who's going to be good immediately, but who they think and they scout and they prod who could be good in the future. And I think that's going to be big for them. They definitely need a serviceable backup if Cam Newton is to get hurt. That's going to be the number one thing. And I think that's where a rookie quarterback could come in and play a big role for this football team.
Absolutely. So moving on from the New England Patriots, let's take a short break and talk about two absolutely terrible signings. The Bears signing Andy Dalton and the Bills signing Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah,
it makes no sense to me. It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
You might. I know you love the Bears, Dan.
I love the Bears for sure.
No, I know you've been complaining about their free agency moves all the time. I know the Bears were trying to throw 1 year for a massive amount of money to Kenny Golladay. Nobody wants to go to the Bears.
No, they don't. They are not a good football team.
Andy Dalton.
I just don't. I don't understand. That's a $10 million contract too. Can we talk about how ridiculous that is for a guy who hasn't been good since like 2014, maybe even before that? It's been a long time since Andy Dalton had a season where he was a solid player. Yeah, it's. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, look, they have Allen Robinson coming back, so that's their best playmaker. I don't get it, man. I really don't. Especially after how he played with Dallas. He just wasn't. He was no good straight up, and I know that made you very happy. Yeah. He had some flashes, but I just don't. I don't see it. And then the Bills with Trubisky, obviously he's not going to be a starter. I mean, they've got one of the best quarterbacks right now in the NFL, so that's not going to change. But that is an interesting move. I think that's very surprising. I did expect him to get signed just because he hasn't been in the NFL very long, and maybe the teams were willing to give him a chance as a backup. Again, he's not a starting quarterback. He's not that good. Both these moves are very head scratching to me, and I just don't have anything else to say about it. Really, I think there are better backup quarterbacks in professional football for sure.
We have much better things to discuss, but I just wanted to touch on those two very head scratching moves, in our opinion.
Yes.
So, okay, let's talk about an interesting one, shifting to the NFC East. The Eagles signing your buddy Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
I mean, I highly doubt Joe Flacco is going to get any playing time. I think he's on the downhill of his career, unfortunately. But you ship Carson Wentz off to the Colts, which I've discussed on Twitter and stuff. And so they ship Carson Wentz. They have Jalen Hurts. They have a brand new head coach. And Joe Flacco, I think he's another mentor role for Jalen Hurts since he is young in the league and so on and so forth. But the Eagles, I highly doubt they're going to do anything well this year with about $22 million tied up in Carson Wentz still. You have to pay Carson Wentz, even though he's playing for Indianapolis. The Eagles are dead last in over cap. I mean, the cap's I forget the amount the cap was, but they're like $46 million over the cap.
Yeah, and
that's not good. That is not good, Dan.
It's the reason why they had to sign, their two the two guys that they signed from free agency who weren't on the team already were only 1 year deals, and they were very little money. Yeah. And of course, Joe Flacco was one of those. And actually, Flacco's deal includes a $2.425 million signing bonus and has 4 avoidable years tacked on for cap management purposes, which I guess means that they can void giving him the signing bonus for I guess according to this for 4 years. And then I guess they have to pay him somewhere down the line just until they get their cap situation taken care of. But yeah, I mean, this is what happens when you spend all your money on one player. You end up hemorrhaging money. Your talent level is going to go way down. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the Eagles are going to struggle big time this year, and I kind of feel for Jalen Hurts. He's a talented quarterback, but it's just not a good situation for him. And that's where I do think Joe Flacco, who has been on both ends of it. I mean, he's played in a Super Bowl. He had a historic playoff run in the 2012 postseason. Or I guess it was 2000. Yeah, it was 2013 was the Super Bowl, but 11 touchdowns, no interceptions, which was tied Joe Montana. So he has experience doing that, but he's also been on another end of it where he's been on some teams that have had bad seasons with, of course, with Baltimore, and then and then later on as well. So yeah, I think this move, and I agree. I think this just makes sense in a mentor sort of capacity. And, Joe Flacco seems to be one of those guys where he could have a career in coaching. And I think this is a good branch maybe for him to see if he wants to coach and sort of, maybe be a quarterback's coach or something down the line. And I think this is a good opportunity to see how he does with a young quarterback, to see if he can mentor him and to see if he can sort of take him under his wing and teach him things he knows. I mean, Joe Flacco I'm sure he has a lot of knowledge of the game. He's been in the league since 2008. So it makes me sad to see how, he's turned out and sort of how things ended in Baltimore. But he had some injury issues late, but also he didn't have much help. And he's just lost a lot from where he was, 4, 5, 6 years ago. A lot changes in the NFL, and I think players definitely have those windows where they're great, and his has definitely passed him by. He's upcoming in his 14th season, so I don't think there's much left for him in his career. But that's why I think him being a backup quarterback to me makes sense. And like you said, being that guy who's a mentor to Jalen Hurts, and I think to other players too, to other young players who will probably look up to him, because like I said, he's done it. I mean, he's played in the Super Bowl. He's Super Bowl MVP. You can't take that away from him, regardless of how poorly he's played since then. But I like Joe Flacco. He's a good guy, and I wish him the best. And definitely enjoyed watching him play in Baltimore for all those years, even the years that the team struggled. So I wish him nothing but the best. But yeah, I agree. I think in general, the Eagles are going to struggle this year, and that Carson Wentz contract was a disaster, and they're going to be. I think they're going to have 4 or 5, maybe even 6 bad seasons before they're able to start to turn it around. I think it's a rebuild right now for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's disaster in Philadelphia. But if you flip it over to another team in the NFC East, the New York Giants, this is a team I think can do big things. Coming from a Washington football team fan, I really think the Giants are set to have a very, very good season. They just picked up wide receiver Kenny Golladay, 4 years, $72 million with $40 million guaranteed. And former Viking Kyle Rudolph, 2 years, $12 million with a $4.5 million signing bonus. Daniel Jones is still a young quarterback for the New York Giants, but these two signings, these are two very great weapons that Daniel Jones can throw to. And I really think with the draft coming up, the Giants are going to find more players to pick up in the draft. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants get first place in the NFC East this year, upcoming season. And
let's not forget, they signed a guy in John Ross who.
Oh, yes, him too.
A couple years ago was one of the Bengals' best offensive players. So he wasn't as good this past year. He only played in 3 games. He had some injuries and such that put him out. But he's a solid player if he can stay healthy. And then on the defensive side, I mean, they signed they franchise tagged Leonard Williams. I think he's a great player. They signed a 1-year deal to Reggie Ragland. I think Reggie Ragland's a decent player. He's not quite great, but they also signed Adoree Jackson to a 3-year $39 million contract. I really like that move. I think Adoree Jackson is a solid corner. So they're definitely, on paper at least, they're going to be one of the best teams in this division. I think outside of Philadelphia, I think this division is going to be really competitive between Washington and the Giants. And I'd even put Dallas in there too. I think Dallas, if health is going to be everything for them this year, and it's a big year for Dak too. But the Giants are impressive. They also signed Mike Glennon, great backup quarterback, Mike Glennon. I'm so shocked that guy's still in the league. But,
oh yeah, I am
anyway,
too.
that's another
Trust
story.
me.
But I do think that they're solid. I really like Kyle Rudolph too. He's a fantastic tight end. Tight ends are so interesting to me in the NFL because you have a guy like Travis Kelce, and then you have everybody else. I guess you could put Gronk in his category too. They're star players, but tight ends, if you can get a solid tight end, they can really make a difference, and not just catching the football, but in run blocking as well. And that's going to be big for the Giants too this year. How are they going to be able to run the football? They have a pretty good running back in Saquon Barkley, so it's going to be interesting to see how that offense does, and especially want to see the development and continue to see Daniel Jones improve. I think this is going to be a big step for him this year because they have the help now, and I like this team. I think it's going to be a much better team this year. Let's hope the whole NFC East is better this year than it was last year, so we're able to finally watch some good football.
That's for sure. So, sticking with the NFC East, the Washington football team. I had the pleasure of interviewing Andy Burrows, all the way from the UK, who runs his own podcast, the DC Tweet Team Podcast. He's coming on the show to talk about the Washington football team signings. I will play that interview for you right now. And when we come back, I will get Dan's thoughts on these signings. Joining us now on the Kirby on Sports podcast to talk a little bit more about free agency for the Washington football team is none other than Andy Burrows from the DC Tweet Team Podcast. Yes, Washington fans exist in the United Kingdom. That's something I had no clue about until I met Andy and his wonderful group of friends. And Andy, welcome to the show. First and foremost, how are you, sir?
What's happening, Josh? I'm good, my man. Thanks for having me all the way from jolly old England. But pleasure to be here.
Oh yeah, always a pleasure. So before we dive in, can you sort of give us a quick story on how you decided to start the DC Tweet Team Podcast, how that came about all the way from England?
Yeah, so I was part of the original Redskins Tweet Team, as we were known back then. And, excuse me, good friends with Maurice, the founder of the Redskins Tweet Team, now DC Tweet Team. He just approached me one day and we were chatting backwards and forwards, seeing the uprising in Washington podcast. Really, this is back in probably June last year, 2020, and Maurice was like, hey, why don't we start a DC Tweet Team podcast? It's a way of bringing fans closer together. It's a way of interacting in what was a crazy year that was 2020. It was just a way of keeping us all together. We couldn't meet up. I used to fly out to the States once or twice a year to meet up with all the guys and girls. It was just a way to stay engaged really at first. And Maurice approached me and was like, do you mind, would you host it? And I was like, yeah, I'll host it. That was in May last year. And this coming Friday, we are hitting episode 100. So it's been a good run. So yeah, that's how it all started, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's taking me places I never thought I'd be. I've spoke to some people that I never thought I'd speak to. I get to do things like this, Josh, with you. So yes, it's all good, buddy.
That's amazing. Episode 100. I remember when I hit the 100th mark. It's a huge accomplishment. So congratulations again. Once again, Andy Burrows with the DC Tweet Team Podcast joining us here. Let's break down some of these moves. I I want to focus on the three big moves that it seemed that Washington stayed up till after we were all in bed to make these moves. First and foremost, they needed a quarterback, and they went out and got an affordable solution in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick, you know the saying, Fitz magic. And I mean, you remember hearing me on the podcast complaining about why the Dolphins benched Ryan Fitzpatrick, but he's getting another opportunity. I think this is more of a bridge situation, Andy, where Fitzpatrick is gonna teach the younger guys and who could potentially be a future franchise guy for the Washington football team. But I really want to get your thoughts on Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's been with almost every team in the National Football League, and he's just one of those guys who's just going to go out and play. Yeah, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we've gone from one extreme to the other, haven't we? We've gone from an Alex Smith, and we all know his nickname being the check down Charlie, to someone that's going to take risks and someone that's going to throw the ball down the field. And when we've got the weapons that we've now got, which we can get onto a few of them obviously later on, I'm sure, it's going to be entertaining. I'm going to be on board for the ride. Are we going to lose some games of him? Is he going to maybe cost us some games? Yes, I think that's a given. He's going to throw a few picks here and there. Is he going to win us some games with the risks he takes, though? Yes. Will he give us a chance to win more games than last season with the options and the weapons that we have now on offense? Yes. So I think it can only be good for Washington. I think it's going to give us that one more season to try and make us an attraction to maybe a future franchise quarterback. Seeing that if a Fitzpatrick can get a tune out of our offense and our team, then who's to say a Russell Wilson wouldn't want to come to the organization next season? Who's to say that, a Watson might not want to come, depending what happens to him? I think Washington aren't silly. They're going to they'll put us on the map, if anything, with a Fitzpatrick at QB, and it's going to be entertaining, Josh. Sundays were already a bit heart attack time for us Washington fans. It's gonna be more than that. Most Sundays now, it's gonna be edge of your seat stuff. Don't blink because you might miss something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Do you think, Andy, that with the signing of Ryan Fitzpatrick, that Washington's gonna go out and draft a quarterback? Because with this signing, I feel like there's a good possibility that Washington could draft a quarterback high in the draft. I don't want them to do that being a fan, but as a podcaster and trying just to formulate an opinion on this, I feel like all answers are pointing towards Washington drafting a quarterback in the higher rounds. But if they don't, I would not be surprised. But I just want to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this the last few days and been chatting to a few people. Don't be surprised if Heineke or Kyle Allen gets cut and are not with us come September, meaning, or with us, come the draft or whenever. I think one of them could go. I think we might draft a QB, and then before training camp and everything starts, obviously someone will get cut. I wouldn't be surprised if Allen or Heineke maybe not be on the roster come September. Oh. There could be a strong chance that we go for someone in the draft. I'm not the most knowledgeable guy on who's coming out the draft. Our college content over here in the UK is not as good. So I listen to you guys and get all my information from the likes of you, Josh, and people like Adam and Eber at the Burgundy and Gold report. Don't be surprised, though. I don't think Kyle Allen's going to be fully fit. I know Ron Rivera likes him. So in answer to your question, yeah, I could see us maybe taking a young gun in the draft, and or a Heineke is kind of a younger version of a Fitzpatrick. Sit behind him for a season, learn. There's so many if buts between now and September. Nothing's won in March, April, May. It's all if buts and maybes, and we're all, like you say, we're all us podcasters and content creators, as we're called. We all have views and opinions, but yeah, I could see us maybe going in the draft, and then one of either Kyle Allen or Taylor Heineke being cut before September.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You say that because I see these contracts that these two quarterbacks just signed, and I mean I'm not sure how that all works if they.
It wouldn't cost us much to cut Heineke, I don't think.
Yeah,
Maybe $1 million.
yeah.
And in the grand scheme of things, that's not, in the NFL, that's chump change, really.
Yeah, no, of course there. So that's an interesting point because you did see these two quarterbacks re-sign with the team, but who knows? They could let them go and just have to pay them with another team or something. But I mean, like you said, it wouldn't be as expensive. So let's move on. One weapon that Ryan Fitzpatrick, if he is the starter, will be able to throw to is Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel is no stranger to Ron Rivera, playing in Carolina with Ron Rivera. I feel like, in my opinion, Curtis Samuel is a really good pickup for the Washington football team. And I really think this will be a good fit because last season, the only two weapons Washington really had were Logan Thomas and Terry McLaurin. And you have to have more than just one wide receiver and one tight end making all the plays. And this adds another element to the Washington football team, in my opinion, by introducing Curtis Samuel. So you can spread the football out more and whatnot. And Curtis Samuel knows Ron Rivera's system. So I think this could potentially be a plug-and-play situation where Curtis Samuel can get the offense memorized pretty fast and start to make plays for the Washington football team.
Yeah, he's gonna know this offense. It won't take him long to get up to speed. It's a Ron Rivera run team now. He's gonna know. He's gonna walk into it. That's probably one of the main reasons he signed for us. He's gonna know that playbook 99% of it already. And you're bringing in a Curtis Samuel with a Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like you say, it opens up the field. But while you're worried about a Terry McLaurin and a Curtis Samuel, we've still got Logan Thomas there that's going to be making plays. People take your eyes off him at your peril. So the options are good for the Washington football team, and Curtis Samuel can also come out of the backfield as a running back. I've been watching some clips recently on him. So you put him into the mix with an Antonio Gibson, a JD McKissick, a Terry McLaurin, we don't know what's happening with, obviously we still got Steve Sims, Cam Sims. There's so many options still for Washington on the offensive side of the ball now. It's frightening. So we had one of the best defenses in the league last season. Our offense have now really got a chance. It's all good talking it. We still have to go and do it in September, and it's we're going to come up against some very good teams within like Tampa Bay, Kansas City, some very good defenses. But I'll be a lot more confident now than I was going into the 2020 season with, like you say, no one rated Logan Thomas going into last season, but now we're going in with Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson, just saying them names should make you feel good as a Washington fan.
Yeah. And you mentioned defense. We'll get to them in just a moment, but all the, I don't really want to say uncertainty, but a lot of these receivers like Steven Sims, Cam Sims, who were out there making plays, it's like, are they going to be involved somehow? Because the more weapons you have on an offense, the better that offense is going to be, in my mind. So with the offense, you need a good defense to complement that, because defense wins championships. One signing, the cornerback. I don't want people to get confused and think I'm saying quarterback. Cornerback William Jackson III from Cincinnati. I'm going to be completely honest with you here, Andy. I've never heard of this guy before in my life.
I think I didn't watch a lot of Bengals games. You're the same, Josh. We're Washington fans. I've gone and watched some film, and some good buddies of ours have put some stuff online, and I've gone and watched him. I was a Derby guy. I was disappointed that he left. But from what I'm seeing is we've got someone now that's got a lot of speed, a lot of awareness. From what I can see, his awareness on the football field is key in that position. I mean, you're going to have to be physically and mentally aware of what's going on around you. And from what I've seen of him, he seems to have that. So on an already good defensive side of the ball, he's going to give us that extra option to come in. And, our defenses are going to score quite a lot of points as well, I think, with takeaways coming up in 2021. So again, it's just another notch on how far the Washington football team have come, that we're getting these kind of players now. Gone are the days of just getting your average Joe coming into Washington. Ron Rivera really is building something in this organization. And yeah, it's going to be a patience game. Who knows how many games we're going to win next season with that schedule, but we're building something now, and he's slowly putting in the pieces. We're still not done yet. We still got the drafts. There's going to be more players. Come September, we're going to be a completely different team to what we were this season that we've just watched. And, we're going to be set up better. For me, this is Ron Rivera's first real season in charge of us. Last season, he got a pass with COVID and with the unfortunate incident with the cancers and stuff like that. I've said many, many times, this will be the first time we see a Ron Rivera team really, really go for it. And, you think we won a division last year with a losing record. I could see us winning 10, 11 games next season.
So with the defense, I feel like there's a lot of uncertainty that needs to be addressed in the secondary. We still don't know if Ryan Kerrigan's staying or leaving due to the amount of playing time and other stuff. The D line looks great, but still, I feel like Washington needs to address the secondary as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've got players like Landon Collins and stuff like that. But Kerrigan's meeting with the Bengals, I think, today. I've just read he's meeting with the Bengals. Obviously, me and you are recording this on a Wednesday, whatever day it is today. He's meeting with the Bengals as we speak, I think. So I think Kerrigan's going to be gone. I think Troy Apke will leave. I can't see him coming back. So there, it depends what happens at safety now. So yeah, I think there's a few options that we still need to explore, but Jack Del Rio knows what. I think he'll know the kind of guys that he wants. We heard him on the HTWR podcast with Maddie and Freddie. I think he kind of knows already that the defense that he wants to run in 2021. I think they would already earmarked the players that they want, whether it be from free agency or, like you say, we've still got the draft to come up. So I have full faith in Jack Del Rio and what he wants from his defense.
Absolutely. So once again, Andy Burrows with the DC Tweet Team podcast, breaking down some Washington football team free agency for us here on the Kirby on Sports podcast. Andy, we appreciate your time, sir. Hope you're doing well and staying safe, and this will not be the last time we get you on the podcast.
I appreciate it, Josh. Always a pleasure to come and chop it up with you, my friend. You are doing great things, sir.
I appreciate that, Andy, very much. It means a lot. The Kirby on Sports podcast, we'll be right back right after this. I'd like to take a moment to talk about my friends over at Regroup Building Services, specializing in custom homes, remodels, additions, and so much more. If you're looking for a new place to call home or just need repairs on your current one, look no further, because Regroup Building Services has you covered. Just a couple months ago, Regroup Building Services came in and redid our entire kitchen, and boy, does it look great. I cannot recommend them enough. So if you're looking for anything to be done, make sure you check them out at www.regroupbuildingservices.com. Once again, that's www.regroupbuildingservices.com, where they do the honeydews that your honey don't. Make sure you tell them Josh sent you. Thank you so much to Andy Burrows of the DC Tweet Team podcast for this segment of the Kirby on Sports podcast. We heard the interview, but your thoughts on these moves, Dan? Fitzmagic, Curtis Samuel, William Jackson III. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, obviously, I said this earlier, he's obviously going to be a bridge for a younger quarterback. Who knows who? Yeah, we don't know yet. And I mean, from what I'm hearing, I still don't know if they're going to pick up a quarterback in the draft or use Heineke, Kyle Allen. I don't know what the situation is, but Curtis Samuel, as I mentioned earlier before, was with Ron Rivera in Carolina. He knows the system. So that and William Jackson III. You might know more about William Jackson III than I do because he played for Cincinnati. To be honest, I don't really know much about him. So, Dan, I just want to get your brief thoughts on the Washington football team and their moves so far.
Well, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick to me was a little head scratching just based on the situation. But I think if Washington doesn't go out and draft a quarterback, I think they've got some legitimate concerns in that position. Because we all know how up and down he is. You know, he can come out one game and throw 4 touchdowns, and then he comes out the next game and he throws 4 interceptions. So they need somebody who's going to be a little more consistent. And I don't think Taylor Heineke's the answer for the future. He had a great game against the Buccaneers in the playoffs. Just came up short, but I don't hate the move. I know when we first talked about that move, I talked about how stupid that was. You and I spoke about this, not on the podcast, but just amongst ourselves. And I said it was a typical Washington move, but, you know, I like those other moves, though. I think Curtis Samuel, he's had a couple really solid seasons. I really think he's a great player. He's really going to help out this offense too. You know, if you look at this offense, they have a really good roster, Josh. And you know, I think Curtis Samuel fits in well. I mean, he's a guy who doesn't miss a lot of football games. The last 2 seasons he's played in 15, and then he played the full season in 2019. And on an offense that kind of struggled the last couple seasons, he was their standout player. So I think he's the best signing out of these 3 guys. William Jackson III, I'm not as familiar with, even though he did play for Cincinnati for about 5 or 6 years. Just looking at his stats, he's a pretty solid player at that position, and they definitely needed help on the defensive side of the ball. I think at the cornerback position. I think if you look at Washington's defensive line and their linebackers, they're pretty loaded at those positions, but we saw them get beat a lot in coverage, passing coverage this season, and I think this really helps them out big time. So I think 2 of the 3 to me make perfect sense, and I think make them a better football team. And again, this division is going to be very interesting. I think between Washington, the Giants, and the Eagles, Washington, the Giants, and of course Dallas, because I think those 3 teams can be competitive to win that division. And I think this puts Washington right in the mix. I really do. They're just going to need to have a good draft, and I think they are going to have to draft a quarterback because I'm a little concerned if they go into the season having Ryan Fitzpatrick and Taylor Heineke. I'm a little concerned about how that's going to play out.
Yeah, I think the front office for Washington is definitely making better moves. Unfortunately, the news broke that Dan Snyder bought the minority shares for $875 million. I just hope that Dan Snyder, as the sole owner of the Washington football team now, will just let Jason Wright, Martin Mayhew, Marty Herney do their thing so we can have a successful football season, the Washington football team, rather. But I think the front office and the people that President Jason Wright and everybody below him has done, I think they've done a pretty good job so far. And I think in the next, this is even a long shot to say maybe 10 to 12 years, the light is shining brightly for the Washington football team. But I say
write that down. Let's remember that.
I say 10 to 12 years, Dan, because it's the Washington football team. It seems like any sort of controversy nowadays comes back to the Washington football team. I could be wrong. It could be 15, 20, 30 years.
What do you think about Brandon Sheriff getting the getting the franchise tag? You think that's a good move? I think he's a solid player. Again,
obviously he is. Yes, we need all the help on defense we can get. Uncertain of Ryan Kerrigan's future. We're going to need all the help on defense. The D line, they're solid, but I'm looking secondary and cornerbacks because that's where I think the Washington football team is going to lose the most help. because players going to different teams, signing different contracts, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But I like the sheriff getting tagged. I just hope it's not another Kirk Cousins situation where they can't negotiate a long-term deal. But
you're gonna get a different story with an offensive lineman than you would a quarterback.
Well, every time I hear the franchise tag, I go back to the Kirk Cousins. But
that was badly handled on both ends. So
I know, but I'm just saying, I hope this is an opportunity for them to discuss a long-term deal and it can actually happen.
Yep, I agree.
And just to let you know, also, wide receiver Adam Humphries from Tennessee, after I interviewed with Andy of the DC Tweet Team podcast, signed with the Washington football team as well. So a lot of weapons all over the place for the Washington football team. And I agree with you, Dan. They need to go out and have a solid draft. And hopefully they can get thrown right back into the mix of the NFC East.
Yeah, I like Adam Humphries a lot. He's a little guy, but he's just a solid receiver. He runs good routes. He's pretty speedy guy. Really helps out that offense, and I think adds another layer. Being that sort of, I think could be sort of an understated weapon for them this year. And I think a big thing for me moving forward with this football team, especially on offense, is they need the running game to step up. They re-signed Lamar Miller to a 1-year deal. Actually, 1-year deal. They haven't had a running back really step up the last couple seasons. They've had some injuries in that position too, but that's going to be huge for them this year too. Who steps out and makes themselves the number one running back on this roster? I think that's going to be interesting moving forward. And if they can get the running game going, this is going to be a really good offense this year with those weapons on the field. If they handle the quarterback thing right, that's going to be a big question too moving forward.
Absolutely. But that is sort of the free agency rundown here on the Kirby on Sports podcast. Much more is to come. When we return, we discuss March Madness. Stick with us. For sports fans living in condominium and homeowners associations, as well as business professionals, when you need a reserve study, PM Plus Reserves has been in business since 1990. Their studies are accurate and easy to understand. Check them out when your association needs a study. www.pmplusreserves.com. You can also contact them at 703-803-8436. Once again, www.pmplusreserves.com. I'm Josh Kirby, joined virtually by Dan Demski, now discussing the madness that is called March Madness, the NCAA tournament. And Dan, I know it really sucked for you, sir, because the very first game, Virginia Tech versus Florida, it went into overtime, and Virginia Tech just could not pull it off, Dan. So our condolences out to you, Dan, the VT man. I mean, for real though, the ACC just did not come out to play at all during this tournament.
No, that's outside of Florida State, there really wasn't a solid grasp on another ACC team that I thought could compete for a national title. And that's basically the way it is. And they've the ACC has really struggled for sure.
Look at UVA.
It was a tough. Yeah.
They lost to Ohio. Ohio.
Well, UVA, I will say, not to defend them, because you know how much I like to make fun of them when they lose, but they had to arrive the day of the game, so it was, or the night before the game, essentially. So it was kind of rough. They had to quarantine and all that. And excuse me. They were missing some starters too. But this has kind of been the case for UVA outside of that national championship 2 years ago. They were kind of known as that team that couldn't get over the hump, that couldn't win the big game, that couldn't get into the big game. And of course, the year before that national championship, of course, they lose to UMBC, first and so far only time that a 16 seed is beaten 1 seed. And this is kind of their MO. I mean, this was a similar seeding in this game. Of course, Ohio was a 13 and Virginia was a 4. Pretty big gap. And yeah, it was just a tough day. Tough shooting from the field for UVA too. They struggled from the field. And they just shot 35% for the game. So, if you don't shoot the ball well in this tournament, teams are going to take advantage of it. We saw that today. I saw that today in the Oregon State Loyola Chicago game, which I know we're not going to talk about, but similar situation where Loyola Chicago just was very cold from the field. That's kind of how it was with UVA. And it's just kind of been the MO for UVA outside of the national championship season. They are the team that struggles against teams they shouldn't struggle against, and they lose somewhat early on in the tournament. It's just kind of how it's been for them, unfortunately. Or I should say, being a Virginia Tech fan, fortunately. Because I knew after they lost in that first round, they're no longer defending champions. There's going to be a new champion in college basketball, which made me very, very happy.
So did Ohio pull a UMBC? Are we giving Virginia the free pass because of COVID?
Yeah, people forget about that UMBC game. Not only did UMBC win, they won by like almost 20 points. So they dominated UVA. It wasn't just like they won by a couple buckets. I think UVA kind of gets a pass with this game. If they had a full week of practice and they had been able to go to Indianapolis the same time everybody else did, and then they lose, then maybe I would argue differently. But being that they had to arrive the night before the game, essentially short night's sleep, and then they were playing, I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, even though, they just went ice cold shooting the basketball. And, I guess essentially they kind of get the free pass for me. And I know my Virginia Tech fans are not going to be happy to hear that, but they had a lot of stuff working against them. And, that was a popular upset pick. I'd heard that about 70% of the country had actually picked that as their biggest upset in the tournament was Ohio to beat Virginia. And it came to fruition. I'm sure a lot of people made money. So, yeah.
I still can't believe it, though, because obviously the COVID concerns there. But still, I mean, like you said, it's UVA's MO, and it just happened again. So let's talk about an interesting one. I was hoping I talked with Alex Flum of WDVM last week about the whole tournament preview and whatnot. And what came up was about COVID. Obviously, we're playing a tournament with COVID and everything, and hopefully they're going to play it safely. And in the first round, there was actually a COVID case with the VCU Rams. And since VCU was the lower seed, Oregon advanced in a no contest. And I thought there would be like some sort of derailment of the tournament, but I guess if you get a positive COVID case, it sucks for VCU. I listened to news reports, articles. VCU was absolutely heartbroken that this happened. And that Oregon just moved on because they were the higher seed in that contest. So unfortunately, I feel like that's how it's going to go the rest of the way. If there was another COVID case, knock on wood, there isn't, but still, I just think that was very interesting how they did that. And it just sucks for VCU that happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's an understatement. Think about those players. VCU's not a team that is typically in the tournament. They've had a couple tournament runs. If you think about, what was it? The early 2010s when they got to the
Final
Sweet 16?
Four.
Or they got to the Final Four, right?
They got
right.
all the way to the Final Four. They beat Kansas. That was with Shaka Smart before he
That's
moved
right.
on. Shaka Smart just recently becoming the head coach at Marquette University.
Yeah, that's a good move for them. Yeah, it's got to be heartbreaking. Like I said, they're not a team that's used to being in the tournament, and even if you're not used to it, I mean, you have guys on the team who've worked probably for 4 years to get them to this opportunity, and they get a chance. They're able to get into the tournament. I think that would have been a fun basketball game too. I think VCU matched up well with Oregon, and then yeah, it ends that way. It's just it's hard to summarize. Sorry, I'm yawning. Oh man. It's just hard to sum up. I mean, it's very it's got to be emotional for those players, and you know, I can't imagine what they've gone through, but you know, it's makes you wonder what they'd been doing to get one of their players tested positive for COVID. That's probably never going to come out because it's, you know, private information. But yeah, I was a little worried as well, being that was the this was the first round for Pete's sake, and you know, you already had a COVID test, so, or COVID positive rather, and I like you said, I was a little nervous as well just seeing that, and so far so good. I mean, a couple teams are already in the Elite Eight, so we'll see about the rest of these games as they finish up tomorrow, and we'll have the Elite Eight by tomorrow night. So the NCAA's done a good job, though, of I think putting on this tournament in general, and so far knocking on my desk here, keeping COVID at bay, which I think has been key.
I hope so. So tragic news from Grand Canyon University. They did not win against Iowa, but 3 days after their tournament, one of their players, Oscar Freyer, dies in a car accident. I mean, it can't get any worse than that. You lose a game, that's tragic enough, and then one of your players gets killed in a car accident. That's absolutely tragic. I saw that a couple days ago, and it brought a tear to my eye almost, because it really sucks. So prayers out to the Freyer family, the family of Oscar Freyer there.
Yeah, it's just incredibly tragic for his family and friends, and for that school as well, who, you know, they had a tough loss, and it's just tough to talk about. I think in a lot of ways. So I really don't have much to add. I think you did a good job of summarizing it. He had a great comeback this season. It was pretty well known where he was. Sorry, I zoned out for a second there. He had a great comeback season this year. He was one of their best players. He was a senior. He was in his 107th career start in that particular game, and he seemed like he was well liked by his teammates, by his coaches, by his family, I'm sure. It's just incredibly sad. I mean, what else can you say? It's so hard to summarize and so hard to talk about. But
once again, prayers out to the families involved in that car accident. I just cannot believe it. I was shocked when I heard it. So, moving on, let's talk about a Cinderella that could have been, obviously wasn't, but the then Shaka Smart coach Texas Longhorns lose to Abline Christian University. Your quick thoughts on this one, Dan?
Yeah, I thought it was a really fun game to watch. It was very back and forth. I really enjoyed it, and I actually got a chance to watch part of this game last week, and yeah, it was shocking to say the least.
I could not believe it. I mean,
but,
Texas,
you know,
number 3 in this tournament, and a small school in Abilene Christian beating them, that was huge.
Yeah, and a lot of people had Texas going far into the tournament too, being one of those teams that could potentially make a run at things. And they were big. The Big 12 teams were 6-0 in the first round of the tournament before Texas lost. But the big key in this game, and Abilene Christian's defense was the key, and they forced 23 turnovers. Texas had 23 turnovers. And they hold them to just 24 points in the second half. That makes all the difference in the world. You can be, they were obviously not hot shooting the basketball because they didn't win by a bigger margin, but yeah, that's that's the key. Defense really does maybe not win championships, but it certainly wins games and wins big games. And I was happy to see that. I that's why I like March Madness a lot. It gives, it definitely gives us a chance to see some of these lesser known schools, and when they get an opportunity to knock off a powerhouse school, it's always a happy time for sure.
I had the pleasure of speaking with Noah Gross of KTXS based in Abilene, Texas. He covered this team and he covered this upset win. Let's get Noah's thoughts on covering Abilene Christian in their big win over the Texas Longhorns. Abilene Christian University, one of the quote unquote Cinderella teams who had a sort of remarkable run, I would say, for the most part. They defeated Texas, the number 3 ranked Texas, in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, they could not make it past UCLA, but Shaka Smart in Texas had a very great program installed, and Abilene Christian University, with a 24-4 record, beats Texas 53-52. Here, joining us now on the Kirby on Sports podcast, briefly to talk about that exciting win, is Noah Gross. He's with KTXS out of Abilene, an ABC affiliate. Noah, thanks for carving out some time for us. How are you, sir?
I am doing well. I am, first of all, thank you for having me on. Second of all, more than happy to talk some ACU. We got everyone in the sports world talking about Abilene Christian, so I'm more than happy to hop on and talk some Wildcats.
Yeah, so, first and foremost, can you sort of give me like a short synopsis on the regular season getting up into this point? Were they guaranteed to get into the tournament, or did they make a deep run into their conference championship? How did that all play out getting into the tournament?
So ACU, the whole season has been pretty clearly the best team in the Southland Conference as far as actual standings and then ratings, KenPom, RPI, whatever you want to do. ACU has been clearly the best team. They had, I believe, 4 regular season losses, 2 before the conference play started against Texas Tech, obviously a very good team, and ACU really hung around. That was a close game, and Tech pulled away at the end. Then against Arkansas, who, again, a very good team. They were undefeated at the time. ACU kind of hung around. So we're like, okay, this team is legit, playing against some powers, was kind of breezing through conference play, had an upset loss on the road to pretty much the worst team in the conference, Central Arkansas, had an injury-filled game on the road at Sam Houston State, who was probably the other best team in the conference, and that was their 4 losses heading into the tournament. So they entered the tournament as the conference tournament, that is, as the 2nd seed. So they got a triple bye. The Southland kind of changed it with COVID and everything. But they were definitely the favorite. They ran over the semifinals against Lamar, and then we all thought they were going to go to the tournament, which I don't know how much you want to get into the whole program, but the fact that they're even a favorite to begin with after being a Division II program not that long ago is pretty crazy. So, yeah, then they kind of ran over Nichols, the number 1 seed, and made it to the tournament, and we all know what happened after that.
So, I did sort of some research, and this is sort of a new program out of this conference. Is that correct?
Yeah, they've been a program for a while, but as a Division I program, this is the most insane thing. So obviously in 2020, there was no tournament, right? ACU kind of had a 4-year transition into being a Division I program starting in, I believe, 2016. It did not go well. They were one of their coach is more than happy to tell you, they were one of the worst Division I programs in the whole, 330 teams. They were one of the worst in all of college basketball. Their first year being eligible for the tournament was 2019, and they won the conference tournament and made it. Just an incredible story. The women's team made it as well in their first year, so it was big time to be in Abline. No season last year. they had a pretty good team. I don't think as good as this year. And then now, just to be as dominant as they are, I mean, you get Cinderellas. I'm not sure Oral Roberts. I'm sure they've been in Division I program longer than ACU. This is literally their second time being eligible for the tournament. They've made it both times. Now they beat Big 12 champion Texas. So a pretty big deal.
Yeah, so I guess just take us through it. Were you there covering it, or what was your role? I mean, with COVID, I know stuff was sort of different. What was your role in covering it? Like, where were you?
I definitely wanted to be there. I tried hard to talk to the higher ups at work to no avail. I don't think anyone in all of Sinclair sports was allowed to go there because there were so many COVID and media restrictions and things like that. So I was in the studio. And I know you should be an unbiased journalist, but I was running around because, I mean, you want to see the teams you cover win and succeed. So I was in the studio, but ACU does not get a lot of media coverage, right? I mean, this isn't your Kentucky or Maryland where there's a bunch of national, regional outlets. It's just local media. Every week there's media availability, and it's me and then a guy from the other TV station in town. So we were kind of leading the charge, and I was doing as much social content, web content, on air. I remember we had our 10 o'clock show, and it was like the second half was just starting in the game, and then kind of watched the rest of it there. So I was in the studio, and it was a very, very crazy night Saturday.
So it seems like this is a small team, as you said about the press conferences, and sort of makes for that potential Cinderella story. And sort of in this instance, they did pull off a Cinderella, as other teams did in the first round of the tournament. So yeah, take us through it, if you don't mind, Noah. Just what you saw from that game. I know Shaka Smart in Texas, he has a great reputation as a head coach, and to beat them by 1 point, I mean, that's remarkable. So can you walk us through some of the big plays or the big moments, big storylines out of that game for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of the national media and the broadcasters doing the game, when they do their little bit of research on Abline Christian, you know, they don't know them like the people that have obviously been around the team the whole year. So they say, I think ACU really led Division I in turnover margin or turnovers forced a game. And we knew that all season long. ACU is a defensive juggernaut. Their offense was kind of at times, they got hot, but it was nothing really to write home about. Defense was their calling card. They've known that. And going into the game, we're kind of thinking, okay, if ACU has a chance, they're going to need to force a ton of turnovers. And Texas had the most turnovers they've had in the entire season.
Wow.
The entire season against Abline Christian, this tiny little school, tiny private university. So as far as what actually happened in the game, there was a clear talent discrepancy. I remember talking to my sports director here at KTXS about kind of early on looking at the game and saying, I think Texas went up like 5-0 or 7-0. And we're like, okay, it's over. But we were just talking about kind of betting lines before. ACU was only an 8.5 point underdog. So Vegas knew ACU could kind of hang around. And just looking at this ACU team, I mean, you said you were looking at their stats. Nobody really stands out. The leading scorer averages under 12 points a game, and he was almost marginal in the tournament. So it's really a group effort defensively. We saw the turnovers. There were so many points in that game where obviously Texas is a more talented team. They have 4 stars, 5 stars. ACU is lucky to get a 2-star, where we thought Texas was going to kind of run away with it. But ACU just was kind of feeling it. And they knew that they could hang with Texas. And that was a completely different mentality than they had in 2019 when it was their first time making the tournament. They were happy to be there. They were facing Kentucky, and they just got ran off the floor, but they weren't really that mad about it. This team kind of knew what to expect. They were the last game to tip off. They had all this time. You bet, no matter what Shaka in Texas says, they were overlooking ACU. So, yeah, I mean, it was incredible, not only that they won, but in the fashion that they did. I mean, Joe Pleasant hit those 2 big free throws at the end, and the broadcast made it clear he's the worst free throw shooter on the team, and he sinks them both. So just an unbelievable night that nobody around this program or any of the fans around here is going to soon forget.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, turnovers played a factor. And like you said, Joe Pleasant, Corian Mason, both with 11 points. Nothing stood out about that game. It was the defense. From what I've seen, it was the defense because, March Madness, you're flipping back and forth through 10 different games or so on and so forth. But before we let you go, Noah, can you tell us what it was like to witness ACU winning that tournament and what, like, sort of that Cinderella story? I know they did not complete it, losing to UCLA. I mean, UCLA, hats off, they're a great program, but sort of that Cinderella sort of moment. What was that like for you at the station and whatnot?
It was something I will never forget. Obviously, I wish I was there, like I said, but I was talking to my friend, you may know, Danielle Stein, who works in Charlottesville, a fellow University of Maryland grad. Obviously, that's where the University of Virginia is. And this is her second year working there. And I was talking to her, I said, who would have thought that when her and I both went to our jobs, her covering University of Virginia, me covering Abline Christian, that I would be the one of the two to see a team win a tournament game. So, I can't really describe it. I mean, it's in these small towns when you're the only really media that consistently covers and you know all the players and these guys that have taken the community college route. They've had to redshirt. They've had a major injury. Everyone's overcome something. These aren't your 5-star guys. Nobody's looking to go pro. I remember on the Zoom after the Southland Conference tournament win, Coach Golding, the ACU coach, was saying, all these big programs, they play for the Final Four every year. We play for Saturday night, meaning that they were just happy to get into the tournament. So for them to play well is when I remember tweeting out, I think with like 10 minutes left, I was like, ACU has the lead against Texas. This is in and of itself as a win in the second half. So to play well, to get a win, to be the talk of the sports world, you said everyone flips back and forth between games. ACU was the only game on at that point. And then to do it against the flagship school in this state, my parents actually sent me an article a little while ago about how much money ACU got from that win. It was like upwards of $100 million or something like that because of expected revenue. So, yeah, I mean, there was no, I don't know the story about Oral Roberts. That's probably the other biggest first round upset, but man, being down here was something else, and seeing the massive support for the team that I didn't even know was there before was definitely a very cool experience.
So access after the game, did you happen? I assume you were able to talk to some coaches and players and get their reactions. Can you tell us sort of what the players' attitudes, celebration sort of went about after that big win? Anything special?
Yeah, I actually had the first question in the post-game Zoom to Coach Golding. And, there was so much national media on there that never has talked to the team before. It's usually just KTXS people and then like two other media people as well, newspaper and the other station. So I asked the first question to Coach Golding and just about like what this means for the program and everything. And he said this question that everyone was retweeting on Twitter, the answer to, he was like, who would have thought little old Abilene Christian out here in the middle of nowhere beating big bad old Texas or something to the sort. And it's really unbelievable in that sense. But to me, the team always believed. I said that quote from Coach Golding where he said, we play for Saturday night, the conference tournament. But if you ask this team, they said, we knew we could hang with them. And the sideline reporter for the game, I forget who it was, talking to Coach Golding at halftime of the game said, Coach Joe Golding said, I believe we can beat them now more than we could at the beginning. So this team it's always believed that the celebration was something that was like, when Virginia won the national championship. This was ACU's national championship. Talking to the team, they were trying to kind of downplay it afterwards, but especially when they got home and my boss went to go greet the team with like 1,000 or so fans there, that's when the players were like, yeah, I mean, that's something we'll never forget. So they're kind of in the same boat as me, as this is an incredible story. And like I said, something that nobody around here is going to ever forget.
Just one of the many Cinderella stories. Unfortunately, ACU did not move on against UCLA, but Still a great story. Once again, Noah Gross joining us. You can follow him on Twitter at Noah_Gross27. Noah, we appreciate the time, my man.
Thank you very much, Josh. It was a pleasure. And like I said, I'll try to stay unbiased, but go Wildcats.
Is it finally time to upgrade your home's interior? How about with an authentic farm table made locally from recycled barnwood? Shenandoah Primitives, based right here in Winchester, Virginia, makes farm tables, benches, tables, coffee tables, and a long list of other items for your home decorating needs. At Shenandoah Primitives, function and style are combined for great furniture that will last generations. If you're interested in combining the industrial look of metal with wood, or considering something incredibly unique with a live edge, Shenandoah Primitives turns those ideas into reality. Thinking about a mirror, wine rack, or other accent piece for your home, Shenandoah Primitives can assist with that as well. As a local small business, Shenandoah Primitives is happy to work with each client for a custom design or schedule an appointment to come out and view current inventory. Local, high-quality, handmade items can be found at Shenandoah Primitives. Find us on Facebook and Instagram or visit us at www.shenandoahprimitives.com. Once again, that's www.shenandoahprimitives.com. Once again, a big thanks to Noah Gross out of KTXS, an ABC affiliate in Abline, Texas. I'm Josh Kirby. Joining with me is Dan Demski. Let's discuss the rest of these upset games. North Texas versus Purdue. Purdue was a number 4 seed in this game. North Texas, a number 13. I mean, this tournament had a ton of upsets. Incredibly a lot of upsets. And I was surprised that Purdue did not beat North Texas. I was sort of surprised because I thought Purdue in the beginning had them sort of handled, but it's not the case.
Yeah, and again, defense was big for North Texas at times when they needed a stop or when they, especially in overtime. I mean, they dominated Purdue when they had to. Frustrated with this thing.
Yeah, so I mean, defense obviously is a key in most of these upsets in March Madness because you see a lot of these teams who don't come out and score a lot of points, but they force so many turnovers. And I feel that's been a common factor in this tournament so far in the first, especially in the first round. I'm not sure if you can agree with me there, Dan, but I think that's definitely a factor.
Well, yeah, and this season's been wacky too, and you know, some teams have played more games than others, so I think that's been a big part of it too. This game specifically, like you said, Purdue. North Texas goes into halftime with the lead. Purdue had a much better second half, and they were able to tie it and take it into overtime. And then I thought after that, once it went to overtime, I really had a feeling that, okay, this is where Purdue's going to run away with it. But man, was I wrong. Thomas Bell for North Texas comes out and hits a 3 to start the overtime period. And then he blocked 2 shots from Purdue to give them, 2 extra possessions there, and then they just rolled in overtime. So, yeah, they were really, really good when they had to be, and especially defensively. This has just been a very interesting March Madness, and it's the reason why they call it March Madness, and it's the reason why they play these games. Purdue is a 7.5-point favorite. North Texas wins by 9, so it just goes to show you that those people that bet on North Texas must have made some good money for sure.
Oral Roberts beating number 2 Ohio State. They not only do that, but Oral Roberts beats Florida. So 2 big games for Oral Roberts. I can't believe it. I've never heard of Oral Roberts before. Yeah, I mean, it was incredible them beating number 2 Ohio State, but to then turn around and beat Florida, incredible.
Yeah, Abmis, or I can't pronounce his name, but anyway, he's a fantastic player. And one thing I was
Absolutely.
really impressed with Oral Roberts is the way they move the basketball around. They don't play a one or two man game. They pass the ball really well. I mean, against Ohio State, they had the leading scorer had 30 points, and then Abmis had 29 points, which is usually unseen. And then the guy who's third in the box score had 6. So maybe they did play a two-man game. Maybe I lied and didn't look at the stats before I said that. But anyway, they were impressive, and they really, I mean, they shocked everyone with beating Ohio State. I think that one is probably the bigger upset. And yeah, it was very impressive. And they, again, another team that got hot in overtime. When the game went to overtime, they played their best basketball and just outplayed Ohio State when it mattered most. It's similar to that Purdue game, to North Texas Purdue. I think this tournament has had so many games like that where it's, first of all, to me, there's been a lot of overtime games in this tournament, more than I am used to seeing. And it makes you wonder how much the season in general has to do with that, or whether it even does or not. But Oral Roberts they're a good basketball team, and they're getting ready to try to play for the Elite Eight here. So it's going to be exciting for sure.
So briefly touching on this one, Clemson out of the ACC, another not so good showing for another ACC team as Rutgers beat them.
Yeah.
I mean, once again, I'm just going to echo what I said before. The ACC has not shown very well in this NCAA tournament.
No, they haven't. And it's just been basically how the season has gone for the ACC. It's been up and down all season for the whole conference outside of Florida State. That's why Florida State is the only team left standing in the ACC. Yeah, it's this game. I really don't have much to say about this game. I thought Rutgers played really well, especially in the second half. It was just a really close game at halftime. Rutgers just pulls away late. And yeah, I mean, it's just oh gosh. Sorry.
No.
I went to the gym today. I think I went too hard.
Dan's yawning during a podcast. I mean, he's going to make us all yawn, and then we're just going to have dead airwaves because we're both going to be sleeping.
We should do a nap time live on Kirby on Sports. No, but yeah, this game to me is just speaks to how the ACC's been this year. Very inconsistent, very shaky, and poor performances when you least expect them. I think that's what I saw in the ACC this year, at least against, just about every team had a bad game now and then. And this game was no exception.
The last two I want to touch on, Sister Jean in Loyola, Chicago, back as they, in the second round, defeat Illinois. That was very impressive to see Loyola, Chicago still have that same magic they had last season. That was pretty huge in my opinion. And Oral Roberts beating Florida, as I mentioned earlier.
Well, this was the upset of the tournament, just based upon the fact that so many people had Illinois going to the Final Four and the national championship. And also you got two teams playing that are very close in proximity. And I think that definitely adds another twist to this. But yeah, it's they are a tough basketball team. And what I really like about Loyola Chicago is their offense runs through Krutwig. I mean, he's a fantastic player inside. And they just dominated in the post. They couldn't really match up with him very well. And then, when they needed to, they can step back and shoot the three well. I just think they're a well-rounded basketball team. And, of course, we're not going to spoil what happened today when Loyola Chicago played. But they are a really good basketball team. And I think a lot of people were very surprised, for sure. And like I said, I do think this is the biggest upset of the tournament because Illinois was a lot of people's pick to win the national championship.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why March Madness is so great. You have 10 games going at a time, essentially, and you, excuse me, you have a lot of upsets, and it's great to see.
Yeah. There's a reason why they call it madness, man. It's unbelievable. And in a season that's been wacky, like I said, some teams have played more games than others. It makes perfect sense that the tournament will be wacky as well. Why not? Why not make that just the way it is? So it's exciting stuff, man. It really, really is. And
I just can't wait for more.
It's just crazy.
I just can't wait for more.
Yeah, right now, Oral Roberts is playing now, as a matter of fact.
We're not going to spoil it, folks. That's just the first two rounds. Once the rounds complete, we will give you updates on the podcast. That's how I'm sort of envisioning it for right now. But besides for that, that's about all we have on this edition of the Kirby on Sports podcast, episode 112. We've gotten this for maybe 112 more.
It's amazing.
After this. Dan, as always, we appreciate you hopping on, man. I'm glad you're doing so well. Thanks for coming on with us again.
Thanks for having me, bro. I really appreciate it. Really had a lot of fun and hope we can do it again soon, man.
For our sponsors, Regroup Building Services, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, in Chief Graphics. For Dan Demski, I'm Josh Kirby. As always, check out our brand new website, www.kirbyonsports.com. You can catch the Kirby on Sports podcast on all streaming platforms, wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you follow us on social media as well. Until the next time you hear us, always remember to create greatness, and we will catch you next time. Peace out.